Hello from Canada. I'm sitting in a different natural environment here. I'm on the Rideau Canal, which is a World Heritage Site going through the middle of the capital of Ottawa. It's about 2 blocks from my house. You might be able to hear a lot of traffic noise. They're building a new building at University of Ottawa across from the canal. There's the German embassy over here, and yet like a ribbon of green and the vitality of water is running through the center of all of this urban construction, urban activity, and this is one of my favorite places to escape to whenever I can. I'm one of the lucky people who has a bit of a natural environment about 500 meters from where I live. So we don't need to go to wilderness, although some of the research shows that deep immersion in wilderness can be incredibly beneficial for us. We don't need to go to wilderness to contact the natural world. I would like to talk a bit about mindfulness in nature and why practice mindfulness in nature. I've been reading a lot of the research on the effect of nature on our well-being, on our minds, on our interactions with other people, and as well was recently inspired by reading Joseph Goldstein's book Mindfulness, in which he talked about uncultivated mindfulness, and this really intrigued me, this quality of wildness even in our minds. And it also resonated with my experience of mindfulness practice, in that I found it had a quality of ease, of joy, of aliveness whenever I could practice in nature. So the uncultivated mindfulness really rings true for me, and that mindfulness is a quality inherent to who we are. It's not just something we learn about or train or go to retreats to experience. And this idea of Joseph Goldstein's of cultivated and uncultivated mindfulness helps me to think about mindfulness practice and the mind as like a garden. We tend to flourish, to develop through right effort. But there's also a quality to a garden that we can control, a quality of aliveness, of when conditions are right, things just blossom. So we know that in terms of cultivated mindfulness, formal mindfulness practice, there's been an explosion of evidence for the benefits of the cultivated mindfulness practice. And I've seen that grow over the last 20 years. We know the effects of cultivated mindfulness, that we see an increase in the thickness of the white matter in the cerebral cortex. There's documented evidence of increased happiness, decreased inflammation, increased creativity, generosity, enhanced focus, problem-solving skills, all those good things with specific cultivated mindfulness training. But we don't talk quite as much about uncultivated mindfulness. And to me, these are the luminous qualities of heart and mind that are just the essence of who we are. I heard this year that there's a lot of rain in the California desert. So a place that usually is dry and apparently devoid of a lot of life is now blooming in profusion with wildflowers. So just like this, like the California desert, we see that the mind can flourish given the right conditions. And it's my observation that, and the observation of many researchers and meditation teachers as well, that nature provides those conditions in which uncultivated mindfulness can occur. And it isn't like this is a linear correspondence, like one dose of nature equals one dose of increased mindfulness. But I think mindfulness provides a resource for those qualities to just naturally emerge. There are so many conditions in our lives that obscure these natural qualities of mindfulness, the conditions of our birth, our training, our upbringing, our education, the rules we were taught about how the world works. And many of these can actually obscure our awareness of things as they really are, or ourselves as we really are, of the world as it really is. And even the habits of our mind, the tendency to want to problem solve or judge or take shortcuts to make sense of our experience, to formulate a self that helps us move through the world, to protect us from harms, to predict a future, to make the world more predictable. All these habits of mind can actually get in the way. So that's kind of the bad news. If our minds are subject to these conditions, and these conditions can obscure the luminous quality of mind, we can really lose contact with things as they are. And there's a lot in our society that does obscure things as they are. The constant distraction of social media, overstimulation, decreasing opportunities for deep connection with other people. I read a study recently that compared between the 50s to the 1980s to the 2000s, the number of close conversations that people had per week with other people went from something like a dozen in the 50s to 5 in the 80s to 0 in the 2000s. So as conditions change, our mind changes in response to these conditions. We get caught in reactive behaviors, we get addicted to our devices, we get disconnected from ourselves and other people, our sympathetic nervous system gets overactivated. And all of these are products of conditions. So in a way, that's the bad news. We get caught in suffering. But I think there's also really good news that goes with the fact that our minds are products of conditioning. And I really like this quote from Rilke's Book of Hours. Let me read it to you. If we surrendered to the earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. Instead, we entangle ourselves in knots of our own making and struggle, lonely and confused. So, like children, we begin again to fall, patiently to trust our heaviness. Even a bird has to do that before he can fly. So mindfulness in nature practice, I think, is an opportunity for us to fall, to come back to the earth's intelligence. And this is the good news about conditioning from my perspective. That the reality is that our ancient brains have been conditioned for thousands of years to flourish in this beautiful environment that continues to thrive despite adversity, despite changing environmental conditions. Humans are part of what Mary Oliver calls in her poem Wild Geese, the family of things. So we belong here. We belong and we thrive when we reconnect to our bodies and the natural environments in which humanity evolved. So this might be a challenge for us to change our perspective of ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, as something at the top of the pyramid, to the family of things. But let me just help perforate maybe that attachment to humans being the pinnacle of evolution. Did you know that you have more microbial cells than human cells in your body by a ratio of 1.3 to 1? We share more than 80% of our genetic material with the common potato. So we're really a part of this natural world on a very physical level. So since we emerged from the primordial ooze, every cell of what makes us alive, what makes us human, actually evolved to work in harmony, not against the natural world around us. So because we co-evolved with the family of things, we tend to function optimally when we're in environments similar to those in which our ancestors evolved. So, as John Muir once wrote about the Sierra Nevadas, we are now in the mountains and they are in us, kindling enthusiasm, making every nerve quiver, filling every pore and cell of us. Researchers know this, that humans tend to still have very positive reactions to natural environments and to nature. Even Jackson Pollock paintings have patterns that are exactly the same as the patterns found in nature. A fractal measurement that is exactly the same as the fractals found in nature. So designers are looking at ways to introduce this abstract fractal quality that our mind seems to naturally respond to into man-made environments as well. So those of you who know me know that I'm partial to research and to evidence, so there's really good evidence that this wild mindfulness, the uncultivated mindfulness, tends to emerge. The most luminous qualities of the human mind tends to emerge when we're in natural environments. So I want to mention just a few of these studies, and then we will practice together. And as one of my first teachers used to say to me all the time, believe nothing I say, go and practice, find out for yourself. So I'll just offer these as hypotheses, and then you can go out and test them yourself and practice. So first, nature provides a source of restoration of the natural qualities of mind. Kaplan, a researcher, has developed a theory called the attention restoration theory, and this hypothesizes that there's two attentional systems. One is the attentional system that we use in our day-to-day work, so directed attention, and we can also cultivate this when we direct our attention in formal mindfulness practice. This requires prolonged focus, ignoring distractions, and is prone to mental fatigue. So an example of directed attention would be trying to solve a problem at work, taking intense focus and ignoring surrounding distractions. But the Kaplans also believe there was a secondary attentional system, and this, they called, it has a beautiful name, soft fascination. So soft fascination doesn't require intense focus and involves effortless reflection. So it's proposed by the attentional restoration theory that natural environments are restorative environments, meaning they enable the directed attentional system to recover from its depletion. So we get a restoration of our natural qualities of attention. Non-harming. Kuo and Sullivan in 2001 found young adults who had a view of nature had higher scores in attentional capacity and also tended to be less aggressive. So there's the quality of non-harming. Richard Louv, whose book I just finished recently called The Nature Cure, he also wrote a wonderful book called Last Child in the Woods, cite studies that demonstrate that the brain just works more effectively in natural environments. So adults and children gain up to 20% more attentional capacity when they're solving problems in nature. Cortisol levels are lower in nature. Creativity is greater in environments with natural elements such as green plants, sounds of nature. One of my favorite studies that Kaplan cited compared two groups of exercisers, one group that exercised in a mall and another group that exercised outside, including in inclement weather. So what I loved about the study is that they both groups got fitness benefits, of course, from the exercise. And actually the inside group liked their exercise group better than the outdoor exercise group, who had to endure cold and rain and I guess other adverse effects. But the people who exercised outside got significantly more mental health benefits than those who exercised inside. So even if we don't like nature, it still has a beneficial effect on us. So that is the complete generosity of nature, that it benefits us even if we don't like it. There's some studies cited by the Greater Good Center at Berkeley, whom I quite love, that nature cultivates natural resources of joy, energy, and readiness for right effort. So they did studies, and it wasn't even real nature like where I'm sitting. They had people look at videos and landscape paintings of nature, and they saw that just looking at images of nature activated specific reward circuits in the brain associated with dopamine, which gives us a sense of purpose, joy, and energy to pursue our goals. We know that nature creates natural qualities of well-being, ease, and decreased reactivity. So in Buddhist terms, equanimity and joy, some of the Brahma Viharas. In a study by Catherine Ward Thompson and her colleagues, they found that people who lived near large areas of green space reported less stress and showed significant declines in cortisol levels over the whole day. Nature also cultivates spaciousness and aliveness. So in this study, again, it was just looking at videos, not sitting outside like I am, and like we will practice today. Participants who viewed a 1-minute video of awesome nature that made them feel happy reported that suddenly they felt like they had enough time to get things done, and that they didn't feel like their lives were slipping away. And other studies that showed that people who reported an experience of awe in the presence of nature showed lower levels of the biomarker IL-6, which is an inflammation marker associated with risk for cardiovascular disease, depression, and autoimmune disease. And these last two studies are some of my favorites, that nature also seemed to influence people to be more generous and kind. So again, this was looking at videos, virtual nature. Who knows what the impact would be in the field, in the sensory support of a real natural world, but looking at videos of nature showed that people were more pro-social and more generous. So when they were given money to share with other people or to play in an economic game, they were much more generous to strangers. So all of these studies raise the wonderful possibility that nature is a context in which uncultivated mindfulness qualities emerge. And here's the last study that I'll cite before we practice. So in this study, they had participants simply go out and stand in a tall grove of trees. And in this study, they reported that after just standing in a tall grove of trees, everyone felt less grandiose and self-important. And again, even observing videos of nature led participants to report a greater sense that their concerns were insignificant and that they were part of something larger than themselves. So believe nothing I say. Go and find out for yourself and practice. This practice that we will do together in nature is an invitation to let go of habits, to let go of subtle aggression, of the need to fix your life, the need to make things different, and just allow the natural environment to help you cultivate that quality that eco-psychologists call soft fascination. So as best you're able, go ahead and find a comfortable position with all the supports that you need, the posture that is alert but relaxed and will settle in.